Today in our 2014 Ford Focus, we're going to be taking a look at showing you how to install the Roadmaster Diode 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo-Coil wiring kit, part number RM-15267. This is going to allow our Focus to accept the signals from our motorhome for our brakes, turn signals, and tail lights. It's going to give us a 6-pin round connector on the front, and it's going to come with a 6 to a 7 cord to connect to the front of our vehicle and the back of our motorhome. Now, the big benefit of having the diode kit in our vehicle is it's going to alleviate the need for the big magnetic lights you see going down the road and running the wire along the edge of our car, potentially scratching it up as we drive down the road. Instead, we're going to be tapping into our factory lighting system, and there's going to be some diodes, so it is going to protect our vehicle against anything that may go wrong on the motorhome end. Now, since it is going to be using our factory system, I do want to mention that since our Focus has a separate turn signal from the brake, the way we're going to be wiring it up is the brake is actually going to become our turn signal when we're flat towing it with our motorhome. But when we're driving it normally, all of our lights are going to function properly and we're not going to have to worry about anything else. Now that we've seen what our wiring looks like and kind of go over some of the features, let's show you how to get it installed. Now for our wiring, I'm going to start up top, and since we have our fascia and headlight removed, it's going to make it a lot easier to get to the front of the vehicle. So I'm just going to leave the big bundle up top right by the battery for now. I'm going to come down behind where the headlight would be and feed it down to the bottom of my bumper. I'm just going to come across, and for now I'm just going to put a small loop so I don't have to worry about it falling off or anything like that. We'll just wrap it around this post on the base plate. So let's go ahead and wire up our plug that's going to sit on the front of our vehicle. Now, the way this is going to mount up is once it's wired, we have these two posts that are in our base plate. I'm going to take a couple self-tapping screws and secure it just like that. But to begin, we're going to take the dust cover off the back of our plug here. And we can set the plug aside for now, but we're going to slide the boot onto our wires pretty far back so it's just out of the way. Now we're going to need to separate each one of our wires and strip back the end of it. The easiest way to do that is just take a pair of cutters and cut right in between each one of the wires. Just want to be careful not to cut the wire itself. And pull them apart, giving ourselves just a little bit more room to work. And you're going to want to strip back each end of the wire. So you're going to want to make sure that you have your bracket in place, because once we attach our wires, we're not going to be able to get it on. So, fortunately, each one of our terminals is going to be labeled. So if we start at the 12 o'clock position, it's going to have a TM, and that's going to be for trailer marker. So we're going to grab our brown wire. I'm going to twist it together so it's nice and tight. Now, when you put these in, I do want to mention that you want to only get the bare wire inside the terminal, because they do kind of get a weird, finicky connection point when you do put the insulation in there. So moving along, the next one to the left, if you're looking at it, is going to be GD, and that's going to be for ground. So we can grab our white wire and tighten the set screw. Next, we're going to have LT, and that's going to be for your left turn signal. And finally, the one right next to that is going to be RT, and that's going to be for our right turn signal, which will be our green wire. And you want to go back and give each one of your wires a good tug, make sure they're securely in there. And once you've gone back and made any adjustments, made sure that none of the wires are going to cross over to another terminal, we can go ahead and take our dust cover and we're going to slide it back over our wires onto the back of the plug. And to help keep it secure, I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape. I'm going to wrap it around it and kind of go onto the wires themselves, hopefully keeping that moisture and debris from getting inside of there and causing any corrosion. And with everything securely mounted, I'm going to get ready to mount our plug to the base plate. It's going to take a couple self-tapping screws. I'm going to secure it right to the base plate with those two posts coming out. with our plug wired up, we can go ahead and take our coiled up wire and we're going to start running it towards the back of the vehicle. Now, everybody's going to do it a little bit differently, but I do want to suggest that you leave somewhat of a small loop up in the engine bay in case your supplemental braking system has to tie into those wires. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and run my wires and then I'll show you how I routed it. So I dropped my wire down from the engine bay and I had it come out right by the subframe up front. I started running it towards the back. Now here along the driver's side frame, there's really nothing to tie it to using zip ties. So I used some loom clamps and some self-tapping screws and I secured it to the bottom of the vehicle. Now we do have different sizes available on our website, so go ahead and pick up a handful of these as well as some self-tapping screws to make it a lot easier to get everything in place. We just went along the side of the vehicle, went underneath this panel right here, and I went up and over the rear axle, went around the spring, and then finally I stopped right here at the back with another one of those loom clamps. Now we're going to need to move up top and take our taillights out. So inside of our hatch here, if we come to the very back, there's going to be an opening on the passenger side here. And if we reach in, there's going to be a black knob. You're going to want to loosen that knob and take it off. And that's going to be holding one of the attachment points holding the taillight in place. It'll be right there. Just going to want to unscrew that and take the knob out. Then if we move just down a little bit, we're going to notice that there's a panel, a cardboard panel. I'm going to pull that out and we're going to have another turn knob right inside. Now if they're a little tight, what you can do is you can take a pair of pliers and you're going to want to go on either side of that knob and just give it a quick turn. You don't want to damage it. It is just plastic. You just go on either side of the ears and give it a turn to unlock it a little bit. And we should be able to turn it out the rest of the way. So with those two loose, we're going to slightly pull the taillight towards the outside, just enough to where we can grab a hold of it, and then we're going to pull straight back. Then we can come to our connector, and there's going to be a small tab that we're going to need to push, and then we can pull the connector out and set the taillight aside. Now we're going to go ahead and do that for the other side as well. Now with our taillights disconnected, I went ahead and turned my headlights on. That way my taillight signal will be on. Now we're going to need to test each one of these pins to figure out which wire is our taillight signal. So it looks like if we're looking in with the clasp on top, it's going to be the bottom left-hand pin. And if we turn the connector around, it's going to be the purple wire with the blue stripe. Now we're going to go ahead and write that down, and we can test our brake signal next. Now at this point, you want to make sure you turn your headlights off to make sure that you're not going to get any kind of false signal. So now we're going to be looking for the brake signal. And we're going to check each one of our pins. So it's going to be right above our taillights. There's going to be the yellow wire with the brown stripe. Now we're going to repeat that for the passenger side as well, verifying which wire is for our taillights and our brake lights. So now here on the passenger side, I just want to go over what color wires are what. Our taillight signal is still going to be that purple with blue striped wire, and they're going to be in the same location. It's going to be, if we're looking at it, the taillight signal is going to be on the bottom left, that purple and blue wire, and then right above it, the black wire with the bluish stripe on it, that's going to be our brake signal. Now the reason why we only need to find our taillight and brake signal is because since our motorhome is going to be using a combined lighting system, our brake signal is also going to supply us for our turn signal. So we'll have our taillight signal and our brake and turn signal on each side. So we can come back to our 4-pole wiring. Now we're going to need to separate each one of our wires. So you can either cut the end or just grab it. And you're going to want to separate it as far up as you can. Now with all 4 wires separated, we're going to have to get our yellow and our brown wire up to the driver's side tail light. So I'm going to take a piece of airline tube that I had laying around. You can use whatever you have available, even if it is just a coat hanger. And I'm actually going to take it and feed it down through the bumper in between the body. Feed it down until I can reach underneath my vehicle. And then I'm going to attach it to my wires and pull it up top. So again, we're going to focus on the yellow wire and the brown wire. So you want to find the end of the wires, take both of them, and I'm going to attach it to the end of my airline tube. I'm just going to take a little bit of electrical tape and secure it. And then we're going to grab the other end of our airline tube and start pulling them up. We want to pull all the excess out until the yellow and brown wire are both up top. So we're going to come up to our connector now that we have our wires up here. You're going to want to pull some of the tape off the wires off the back. That way we have something to work with. You're going to want to expose that taillight signal wire and the brake light signal wire. So we're going to go ahead and start with our yellow wire, which is going to correspond with our left turn and brake signal, which if you remember is going to be that brown wire with the yellow stripe. So we're going to move downstream just a bit from the plug, and we're going to cut that wire in half and strip back both ends. And we're going to grab one of our diode packs, and it doesn't matter which ones we grab, but we're going to grab one connector for each one of our wires. We're going to slide them over and crimp them down. Now we can take our diode, making sure that the out section is going towards the socket on our tail light. We're going to plug that wire in. We're going to plug the in to the other side. And we should have one more terminal left, and that's where our yellow wire is going to come into play. So we're going to estimate about how much we need. Go ahead and cut the wire and strip back the end of it. And we can go ahead and crimp on that last spade terminal and plug it back in to the inside of our diode. Now we're going to repeat that basic process for our taillight signal, but it is going to be slightly different. So go ahead and do that together. So again, we're going to move downstream just a bit. We're going to cut the wire in half and strip back both ends. Now this part's going to be the same for all of them. And we can grab another one of our diodes, except this time we're going to grab the one that has one of the yellow connectors on it as well. Starting with the factory wires, we're going to put the two blue connectors on the factory wires first, crimping them down. We can go ahead and plug it in to the diode. Now what's going to make this slightly different is we're still going to measure about how much wire we need. And we'll strip it back. This time we're going to take the excess wire and strip that as well. So we should have the brown wire coming up from underneath, and then the excess wire that we cut off. We're going to twist both of those together, and we're going to put the yellow connector on the end of both of those wires. And again, this is going to go into the inside of the diode. Now the other end, the free end of that brown wire, we're going to take and we're going to drop back down through the body and the bumper here, and we're going to meet up with that green wire below. You're going to want to find the end of your green wire and your brown wire that you just drop back down, and we're going to run them from the driver's side over to the passenger side and use the same method to get them up to the taillight that we did before with that airline tube. Just want to make sure that you secure them behind the bumper Anywhere you can, just make sure you stay away from the exhaust or any other moving parts. Just want to pull all your slack out, both the wires. Make sure you don't have a big wad underneath the vehicle either. So here on the passenger side, we wired up both the other diodes exactly the same. The green wire is going to go to your brake signal, and the brown wire that we ran up from the other side is going to go to our taillight signal. On the back of our diodes, we're going to have some double-sided foam tape. So I'm going to take the backing off of each one, and just because of the limited room that we have behind our taillight, I'm actually going to sandwich them together. And then we can work on getting our taillight back in place. And make sure it locks into place. Then you're just going to want to line up the pins, and we can push the taillight back into position. You may need to move the diodes around to clear some things, get it around the wiring. Then we can put our 2 turn knobs back on the inside. I'm going to repeat that for the other side as well. So we should have 1 white wire left. Now this is going to be our ground, and they do provide us with a ring terminal and a self-tapping screw that we can screw into some sheet metal. So I'm just going to cut off the excess wire and strip back the end, and we can crimp our ring terminal down. So I'm going to take the self-tapping screw and a 5/16 nut driver. I'm going to screw it right into the sheet metal at the bottom of the trunk pan here. Now we can come back and clean up all of our loose wires and tie them up and make sure everything's nice and secure and looking nice. I'm just going to take all my wires, bundle them together, then going through the flange on the bumper here, I'm going to take a zip tie and secure it down. And make sure they won't get caught or driving down the road or get snagged on anything. So now that our installation is complete, we'll go ahead and check our circuits and make sure everything's working properly. So I have my tester hooked up to simulate my motorhome. If I turn on the taillights, we can see that they're both coming on. Now if I hit the left turn signal, we can see that that's coming on as well, and the right. Now you're going to notice that the turn signals are coming on in the same spots as the brakes. Now that's only going to happen when we have the motorhome hooked up. When we don't, it's going to run like normal and we're not going to have to worry about anything. So if I hit the brakes, we can see that the brakes are going to work normal, as well as the lights. And then if I turn the turn signals on, the turn signal itself is going to blink rather than the brake signal when we have our motorhome hooked up. And that'll finish up your look at the Roadmaster Diode 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo-Coil wiring kit, part number RM-15267 on our 2014 Ford Focus.